It was supposed to be an ordinary Sunday morning, the kind where families dress in their best, gather at church, and find peace in routine. But for Jenna and Marcus, every Sunday had become a reminder of what they had lost 8 years earlier. Their identical albino twin daughters vanished without a trace while in the care of a trusted nanny. One minute they were playing with blocks in the living room, the next, gone. The case shocked the entire town, leaving investigators baffled, and the parents shattered. Despite desperate searches, press coverage, and sleepless nights, no answers ever came. Life eventually moved forward, at least on the surface. Jenna buried herself in volunteer work, while Marcus clung to hope, checking every lead, no matter how far-fetched. Then, one crisp spring morning, everything changed. As the choir's final note echoed through the chapel, Jenna glanced across the congregation and froze. 2 young girls, about the right age, with pale skin, white blonde hair, and hauntingly familiar eyes, sat quietly near the back. They were dressed modestly, hands folded in their laps, flanked by an unfamiliar woman who watched them too closely. Jenna's heart pounded. Could it really be them? Or was her grief playing cruel tricks again? Marcus followed her gaze and immediately stiffened. He knew that look, he felt it too. Without making a scene, they slipped outside and waited by the parking lot, unsure of what they were about to face. Something about that woman didn't feel right. Something was deeply, terribly wrong. Jenna's hands trembled as she clutched Marcus's sleeve. Her eyes locked on the church doors. Mind raced back to that awful day, the way the nanny, Claire, had frantically called, saying the twins had disappeared. She had claimed she stepped outside to take a call, and when she came back, both girls were gone. No broken windows, no forced entry. Just silence and a wide-open front door. Police searched the neighborhood for weeks. Claire was questioned over and over, but with no evidence, she walked free. That day had never made sense. Now, Jenna's heart was pounding in a rhythm she hadn't felt in years. The girls inside the church had the same distinctive features: the pale eyelashes, snow-white hair, the way one of them nervously twirled her fingers like Ivy used to. Marcus glanced at her and gave a slight nod, like he'd read her thoughts. He felt it too. But who was the woman with them? The door creaked open. The woman stepped out first, scanning the lot. She looked too composed, too aware. The girls followed behind her closely, not saying a word. Jenna held her breath. Something about their posture seemed off-controlled, even rehearsed. As the woman led them toward a beat-up minivan, Jenna noticed something else. A faded stuffed bunny clutched tightly under one twin's arm. Ivy's bunny, the same one missing the ear that Jenna had stitched by hand. Marcus reached for his phone to call the police, but something stopped him. What if that alert made them vanish again? Jenna grabbed Marcus's hand and whispered, "We need to follow them." Her voice was steady, but her heart raced. They slipped into their car and trailed the van at a safe distance, weaving through the quiet Sunday streets of town. Every stop sign felt longer, every turn more suspicious. Jenna couldn't stop staring at the bunny through the back window shade. Embroidered Ivy's initials on the foot, and now she was sure these were their daughters. As they drove, Jenna's thoughts returned to Claire, the nanny. She'd always seemed trustworthy, warm even, but now Jenna couldn't shake the idea that maybe she hadn't acted alone. The police never found any leads, but what if someone paid her? What if the girls had been taken for something bigger, something organized? Marcus turned into a side street, keeping the van in view. "She's heading out of town," he murmured, toward the old farm. Roads that unsettled Jenna even more. Why wouldn't they go home after church? Meanwhile, inside the van, the girls sat in silence. They looked tired, not like kids after a morning at church. The woman glanced at them through the rearview mirror with an expression that was hard to read, somewhere between fear and control. Back in the car, Marcus was making a mental list: police, private investigators, news media, anyone who could help. But they couldn't risk losing the van. Jenna knew this might be their only chance, and as the trees thickened around them, the question hung heavy in the air. Where were they being taken? The narrow road led them deeper into the countryside, where tall trees arched over the cracked pavement and cell phone service flickered in and out. Jenna gripped the dashboard as Marcus slowed the car to avoid being noticed. The van ahead turned sharply down a gravel path, disappearing behind overgrown brush and rusted fencing. Marcus eased the car to a stop just before the turn, both of them staring in silence. The air felt heavier now, like they were stepping into something they weren't prepared for. Jenna spotted a sign barely hanging on a crooked post. Private property, no trespassing. Her pulse quickened. What is this place? She whispered. Marcus shook his head, eyes scanning for movement. Through the trees, they saw the van parked beside a crumbling farmhouse. The woman was getting out, checking her surroundings. Then, she opened the back door and motioned for the twins to follow. They moved slowly, heads down like they were used to not asking questions. Just as Marcus reached for the door handle, a figure appeared on the porch of the farmhouse. An older man, thin, wearing a tattered coat, stood motionless, watching. He said nothing, but the woman gave a small nod toward him, almost like a signal. The girls hesitated, then stepped inside. The front door closed behind them. Jenna's voice cracked. "We can't wait anymore." But before they could act, a second vehicle appeared at the edge of the woods, its engine low, lights off. Someone else was coming, and they weren't part of the church crowd. Marcus ducked down, pulling Jenna with him as the second vehicle crept closer to the farmhouse. It was a dark SUV, windows tinted, moving like it had done this drive before. It parked beside the van without hesitation. A tall man stepped out, dressed in all black, talking into a walkie-talkie. His tone was sharp, businesslike. He didn't even glance at the house. He just popped the trunk and pulled out a duffel bag. Jenna's breath caught when she noticed what was inside: bundles of cash. "What is this?" she whispered. Marcus stared, trying to make sense of it. The woman and the older man came out to meet the stranger. No words were exchanged. Instead, the man handed the duffel to the woman and opened the SUV's back door. The girls didn't come out. They were being handed off again. Jenna clutched Marcus's arm. "They're being sold." Marcus grabbed his phone to call the police. But there was no signal. Just a spinning icon and a blank screen. They were too far out, too isolated. Time was slipping away, and help was out of reach. Then, just as the woman turned to re-enter the farmhouse, Jenna caught sight of something on her neck. A scar long and thin, identical to one Jenna remembered Claire, their former nanny. Having her hair was darker now, cut shorter, but that scar gave her away. It wasn't just any woman. It was Claire. And somehow, she had been behind this. From the very beginning, Marcus didn't hesitate. He threw the car into reverse, backing up just far enough to catch a single bar of signal. He hit dial 911, his voice low but urgent as he gave the dispatcher every detail he could. Jenna stayed locked on the scene, heart thudding in her chest as Claire motioned for the twins to come outside. They stepped out slowly, clutching each other's hands. The man in black approached them, speaking softly, and pulled something from his coat. It wasn't a wallet. It was a blindfold. Jenna couldn't wait. She jumped out of the car, yelling, "Stop! Get away from them!" Her voice pierced the quiet woods like a siren. The group froze. Claire turned, eyes wide with shock and recognition. "Jenna?" she gasped, completely thrown. Marcus rushed after her, waving his phone in the air. "Police are on their way." He shouted. The man in black reached for his pocket, but before anything could escalate, tires screeched in the distance. Red and blue lights flickered through the trees. Claire panicked, yelling something incoherent as she tried to shove the girls back toward the farmhouse, but it was too late. Officers swarmed the clearing, weapons drawn. Shouting commands, Claire was tackled to the ground, the man restrained beside her. The girls stood frozen until Jenna rushed to them, falling to her knees, arms wide open. Ivy dropped the stuffed bunny and ran to her, but just as relief swept over everyone, an officer called out, "We found something in the shed. You need to see this now." Jenna held the girls tightly as officers secured the scene. Ivy sobbed into her shoulder while her sister, Emma, stood quietly, still too shocked to cry. Marcus stood over them, his hand resting gently on their backs. For the first time in 8 years, they were whole again. But the moment was short-lived. One of the deputies led them to the shed, flashlight in hand. Inside, they found photos, dozens of children's faces pinned to a board, each labeled with numbers and dates. Some of them were crossed out. It became clear that Claire hadn't been working alone. This was part of a larger operation. Authorities immediately launched a full-scale investigation, and news of the bust made headlines across the country. Claire was charged not only with the abduction of the twins, but with aiding in a broader child trafficking network. The man in black was identified as a known recruiter under investigation in multiple states. Thanks to Jenna and Marcus's persistence, the operation was exposed before more children were taken.